Alright, like I'm probably going to say in the description, this video is going on about a year old now. This helmet was made quite a while ago, so some of these techniques are a little bit outdated, but I figured I might as well put them up there just in case, you know, you learn anything or there's anything interesting to you. And if you have any questions or anything, just throw them in the comments, and I should be checking back periodically. I should be able to answer any sort of questions. I'm not going to probably break this down and do like call out videos where I go through and explain every little technique that I do. Just for this one, I will probably end up doing that later on. But for this one now, this is just like an old concept sketch that I took to completion on the helmet. And like I said, there's a lot of outdated techniques. There's a lot of things that I would probably do differently, a little bit faster, a little bit cleaner. But just kind of what I wanted to do with this was just prove that I could go through in ZBrush completely and just do a very nice, clean, refined helmet. And since then, for the past year, I've been doing a lot more of that at work, and so now it's actually even a little bit faster, and techniques are a little bit cleaner. So, but you can kind of see me starting with some old techniques and kind of learning as I go, and hopefully coming up soon, I'll have some more videos for you guys that have even more faster, newer techniques. But basically, I just started out with a base female, and all of this is just super basic ZBrush stuff: mask, inflate, transpose, mask here, clay brush, clay buildup. A lot of people like. When I get to the refining stage, I usually just stick with clay because clay buildup requires a little bit more cleanup from me. For my shapes, I like the softer clay feel. If I need more intensity, I'll just crank that up. If I need to sharpen it up, I'll just use an alpha in my clay brush. But if clay buildup works for you, that's fine. I use it a little bit. And for this thing, I had no idea what I wanted to make. Really, I had no concept at all. For my coming up videos, I might go a little bit more into design stuff, but this was just me playing around a year ago, just trying to be like, let's make a mech female bulky armor. Nothing more specific than that. And again, like I said, standard brush to dig in my details, clay buildup, clay brush. You can use the Damien standard. I have all these set up to hotkeys, all the stuff I use for my concept brushing. So, Alt W is my move brush. Alt V is move, but with under the curve over there on the left, you're going to see a brush menu. If you open up that curve and you turn on AccuCurve, you can use your move brush, and that'll actually pull it out to a point. I use that a lot for making squared off shapes. Nothing accurate, it's not accurately squared off, but I'm not going in there and extruding faces and creasing or anything. But what I am doing is just, while I'm in the concepting phase, I don't want to sit there and slow down and think about that kind of stuff. So what I will use to kind of sharpen off corners or pull into corners is turning on the move brush, turning on that, opening up that curve menu, turning on accurate mode, and then I'll save that as a separate brush and then save it in my Z startup brushes, and then I'll assign a hotkey to that because I use it often enough to where I would need to have a hotkey for it. And then, of course, just some basic insertion, insert brush, insert sphere. And then if you have a Dynamesh and you use an insert brush on it, it will actually inherit the Dynamesh properties. So that's kind of useful. You can just insert a kneecap, and then I'll do a hide point split hidden, which I have in my little marking menu there. You can set up a custom menu and assign that to a hotkey. So everything I need to do, you're going to see I'm not over there on the right side going through swiping up and down in my tool menu a whole lot. For very specific things I don't do very often, I'll go over there, but for the most part, I am all on the screen with hotkeys and navigation, and up here grabbing separate brushes. That's about it. I'm not constantly going over there to my deformations or polygroups or any of that stuff. I'm using them a lot and masking and stuff, but I'm not going over to that menu. I have a hotkey marking menu that I use. And again, this is mostly just clay brush and move brush, honestly. And it's a little bit, it's a little bit hard to watch because again, this is a while back. But I don't know. I guess it works for what I was doing, which is basically just make something that I could play with, something that I could take through ZBrush. Can I do it in ZBrush? Do I have to go back into Maya? Do I have to go in hard edge model, or can I just stay in ZBrush and have a little bit more fun, be a little bit more fluid? And the answer turned out to be yes. And again, like I said, these techniques are a little bit old, so there's even a little bit better ways to do things, and I'm sure there's more new exciting stuff from ZBrush, coming out all the time. So as of this recording, and this was a year ago, this is the best I had. And I'm using a little bit of Z-spheres. This didn't turn out, I don't know, if I need really accurate topology that needs to be in a tube form, I'll use Z-spheres, or if I'm building a base human and I just need some really quick mesh to kind of mess with, to grow in there with clay brush and Dynamesh, I'll use Z-spheres. I wasn't all that successful. If you need to just pull off a handle, what I would suggest doing is just masking out a little piece of your Dynamesh model, pulling that out, and then masking it again and pulling it in, and then you have a little handle, because if you have polygons that go out and touch, then it'll just Dynamesh back into a single mesh. You'll see there I'm going to start breaking apart my mesh. So once I get my base sculpt done, I'll go through and mask out a piece, or just isolate a piece through visibility, and then in my little marking menu I keep pulling up, I can do a hide point split hidden, or you can go into your subtools, and I think it's split unmasked or something. There's go into your modify geometry, modify topology, or maybe split. No, modify split, and you're going to see right there you can do a group split, split similar parts, split unmasked point. So you can use all of those to kind of either mask or isolate a piece of your model, isolate that into its own subtool, and then you can do a close holes, Dynamesh. I'm always hitting Control W to re-polygroup everything back, because when you Dynamesh or you close hole, it's just going to give you another polygroup, which you can use to your advantage. And again, when I make the actual video later on, I'll be going through these techniques, and it won't be so abstract for those of you who'd have no clue what I'm talking about. But you can use that to your advantage, or it's kind of to your disadvantage to have polygroups on sometimes. If you're doing like a slice and you want to, group that off into its own thing and do a nice clean break, and then you have a polygroup there and you slice it again, you'll get those really thin Dynamesh planes that are full of holes. You can avoid that by constantly polygrouping or auto grouping, but and there's other ways to get around that too, which when I do my slower technique as I do it videos later on, I'll explain those techniques a little bit better. And working all over my model, I do end up just going in and refining the helmet, because again, I was working on this in my own time. I was a little bit slow. My techniques weren't as fast as they are now. So, right now I could do, in the same amount of time it took me to do this helmet, I could do an entire body. But at this point, I really needed to focus in on something nice. So ideally what I would do is work over the entire model, which I'm doing now in the concept phase, just, going all around the model, and if I see something that needs a little bit more work, I'll do it, and I'll take a step back and look at the whole thing and go back in, and I'm not working on a glove for 3 days and then working on a shoulder for 3 days and then working on a helmet for 3 days. I'm constantly swinging around my model, updating as I go. But eventually I do focus in and go, okay, well, in a perfect world, I'd go back in and redo the whole body, which I might still do. I think I still have the file. But, I've got other models coming up that we can do, and I'm playing with and practicing with stuff. So coming up soon, again, I keep saying that, but I really, really hope coming up soon I'll be able to sit down and, do all these techniques and throw them up on my YouTube channel, and you can go through and watch them and make your own cool stuff and post comments and questions that you have. And that was just so, like I was talking about earlier, you can pull a handle off just by masking, pulling that geometry out, masking, pulling the geometry in, and then you've got a handle, and then you can break that handle off into its own subtool, and then with transpose you can control shift and just drag down, and it'll make a duplicate. And you do that 3-4 times and get some nice pattern and repetition on your model. Also, if you have an insert brush of a handle you really like, even in the concept phase, go ahead and throw it on there. Even if you Dynamesh it and you lose your detail, it's not a big deal, because again, this is just base mesh creation. You can always refine these models or replace these unrefined models with more refined models later on. This is more about getting your forms in, getting your shapes in, getting your proportions in, getting your landmarks in, so that you know where to go back in and kind of refine, and getting your big strokes out, so that you're not stuck doing a whole lot of detail work and a whole lot of time-consuming work, and then 2 weeks later you realize, oh, this is all busted because it's going to look really bad because of decisions I didn't think about, because I got too focused in one area. So get in there, concept, and on this new model I'll have for you guys. By the time I'm done concepting, I mean this took me all of, I don't know, hour and a half maybe, just to kind of go through and have fun with ZBrush. Yeah, same thing with the model I'm working on now. The concept part's the funnest part, and then refining is actually a little bit funner for me now, and actually detailing is really fun too. So I can't even say that it's the most fun part. They're all fun. They're all fun in their own ways. Um, but once you get this all blocked in the way you want it, then you have I feel a little safer moving on to the next step and not going, oh man, I really wish I hadn't done that. And if you want to go even a step further, you could pop all these subtools off and animate them around and move them around with transpose and layers and kind of see, okay, is this going to slide in here? Is this going to pop out? Is this going to rotate on this axis with this joint? All that good stuff. Even in this phase. And in this phase, what you can also do is, maybe not this model so much since it's pretty, this one's still pretty rough. The new model I have, it's a little bit more refined, same amount of time, but just a little bit more refined. And you can actually go in there and, if you really wanted to, do a quick Z-Remesh, get yourself a game res mesh. You dynamesh it all together, do a Z-Remesh projectile, UV it really quickly. Go in there, give yourself a quick poly paint to mask out the material IDs, throw that into Dedo, throw that into Substance Designer, and you can have yourself an in-game model. I mean, if you have a rig that you can bind it to, you can have yourself an in-game model with basic materials and even wear and tear. I mean, it's not going to look great. You're not going to be able to go in there and, art direct the screw ports or anything, but as far as running around and doing stuff, you can have an in-game model in under a day or two, depending on if you want to go back and forth with, concept or art direction. But there's no reason to sit here and, go through a concept phase for 2 weeks and then go through a 3D phase for 2 weeks, and then go back to the concept phase because it didn't translate right for another week, and then go back in a 3D phase for another week, and then clean up for 3 weeks, and then finally get to see your model in. Now, of course, you could build a proxy, and that's just super bare bones, 1,000 polygons, and throw that in the game, but you're not getting material information, color information, real silhouette information, kind of. I mean, yeah, you kind of are, but you're kind of not. But in this method, again, assuming you have a rig and animation pipeline that you can just kind of throw it in and get it in the game very quickly, with this method, you could answer a lot of questions from 10 feet. Yeah, you can't answer a lot of questions from, right up next to your model maybe, but from 10 feet away, which is, I would imagine, where most of the game playing and stuff's taking place, unless you're making, I don't know, a really specific game that gets right in on your character all the time. I think you could probably make most of your game just with a concept sculpt, believe it or not, with materials and the new texturing methods and stuff, or throwing on PBR materials and realistic lighting and materials and wear and tear. And yeah, it's on a concept sculpt that's not very refined, but again, once you're in game running around with lighting and materials on it, it kind of actually looks about right. And then that way you're not stuck going through the 2-month-long process of all this stuff that back and forth between multiple departments just to get it in game and go, oh man, yeah, we need to, backpack needs to be changed, shoulders need to be changed, the proportions aren't right, silhouette's not reading from a distance, all these things. So not only are you getting, concept is valuable from one direction, a 3D concept is valuable from multiple directions, and you can zoom in, zoom out, turn it around, make it all black, make it all white, put it against the background. You can also apply materials to get a game res in there, see if it's going to deform correctly, get it in game, get it in engine, running around. So you're answering almost every question besides details, which, those questions don't really need to be answered until the very end polish phase anyways. I took the chest plate off, and now I'm doing a kind of a medieval armor riff, just for fun.